Now that my lesson has been canceled for this afternoon, not only can I focus on mowing a bit more, but I'm taking a little break and I am out here in the garden checking on everything. You know, I told you in a previous video that we had a critter that got into our garden and really nipped everything, which is why everything is now covered quite substantially. You know, we have netting around or over pretty much everything. You know, we have cages around some of our plants that don't have the planters or the hoops. The lettuce was not bothered, nor were the potatoes, so that's good. I have a little garden helper out here today. Little shrimpy is over there. I wanted to show you though, after the critter got in and nipped everything, we decided to go ahead and bite the bullet, and we went and bought ourselves a little game cam. We're hoping to see just what it was. I suspect it's a groundhog. But I did just turn the camera off while I'm out here because it doesn't need to film me filming everything else. That would be kind of silly. The garden seems to be recovering pretty well after everything had that little nip a few days ago. We had a really good soaking rain earlier in the week. We've had a few dry days, and so even though they're calling for rain this evening, you know, it's still looking a little questionable. They are calling for overnight rain, and so because of that, I don't need to water things heavily, but I do want to go ahead and just give everything a little bit of water by the off chance that we don't get that overnight rain. So I'm going to take this little break from mowing. I'm going to water everything real quick and and say hi to my kitty cat, and then I'll get back to mowing. So I just want to show you though, I'm in the garden right now. There are a couple of things that I'm going to try to do in here. Like say watering is one. We've had some bugs getting on our little teeny baby, what are they? Eggplants. The eggplants have had these really small bugs on them. So I have dusted the eggplant, and our tomatoes, I'll try to show you. The tomatoes, we had these little stakes helping them to stand up tall because some of them were still very small and not all that well established yet. But now that they've been in the ground for a few weeks, I'm going to take all of those little stakes out, and they have these little collars on them to help them stand up. I'm going to remove all of those today, and you know, in the coming weeks, as the as the tomato plants get a little bigger, we will go ahead and put the large substantial stakes in the ground, and that way they'll have those to kind of support either the plant, or sometimes the stakes are really good at supporting the cage. You know, sometimes the plant gets so heavy that when it leans, the cage falls. So, you know, you can do one of two things. You can stake your plant up tall to the tall stake, or you can tie your cage. Sometimes we just kind of wait and see what the need is. But those are the few little things I'm doing today in the garden. And then if I have time and it's still dry, I'll hop back on the mower. Here we have one of our tomatoes that has the collar on it. I have used bamboo skewers for the stake, and then I used twist ties to be the collar. And so now that this plant is more substantial, I'm going to go ahead and remove my skewer and my twist tie. And you know, when these get a little taller and start needing additional support, then we will come back with the big tall tomato stakes. But these skewers worked well for the small little baby plants. You know, these are growing nicely. Whatever got into the garden the other day did not bother our tomatoes. I say that we have one little baby tomato plant that was nibbled on, but I think whatever the critter was realized that tomatoes don't taste very good. They have quite a strong smell, and most animals do not bother tomatoes. And then our peppers also seem to fare really well. So, but that's what I was doing here with our skewer and our bread tie, twist tie. I have maybe one or two more to remove, and then I am going to water everything. Shrimp is really happy to have a little attention though. I've got all my stakes here and my ties. And I'll show you that one little tomato plant that did get nipped. Oh, shrimp just bumped my camera. You can see something, certainly, sorry guys, certainly nipped a few of those little teeny branches. But just beyond this nipped tomato, I have my eggplants. And I did go ahead and sprinkle them today because they had these little black bugs. We had issues with these bugs last year as well. And we had to really stay on top of dusting the plants until they were quite substantial. And then later in the summer, when they got closer to fruiting, luckily those bugs were no longer after them. Our tomatoes are doing really well. I've got to say we're beginning to see a few little blooms even on them. So that's exciting. The little blooms will soon be tomatoes. This larger plant here is one of the first to get a little bloom on it. And something else I want to show you over here in the tomatoes, I have our first little transplant. This tomato is a volunteer that came up from last year's crop that had fallen to the ground. Pretty much every year as we begin to garden, we find new volunteers, and there are one or two more. Shrimp is still helping me here. One or two more along this pathway that I'm going to let get a little bit larger, and I think that might be it, about halfway down. But I'm going to let it get a little bit larger, and then I will transplant it just like I did this one. I think these little transplants are going to be small cherries that we have had for several years now. And if that is the case, if that's another cherry here, this will be like a volunteer from a volunteer from a volunteer from a volunteer. So that's pretty cool. As I'm walking down our tomato line, I have actually spied a few more tomatoes, little volunteers. There's one right there, and there's one over here. And I think while I have these stakes in my hand, I think I'm going to go ahead and put a stake right here at each of them. And that way I will know kind of where to keep my eyes peeled as they continue to mature a bit. I'm going to go put one down at that last one we saw. But this way it also just kind of gives me a visual so I don't step on them, I don't weed them. And I'll hopefully transplant them soon. Even helpers get tired. After I found that one or two additional volunteer tomatoes, I couldn't help but then search for more. And I don't know if you can see, but I've got several stakes here beside me. I've got a bunch of them spread all out across the garden. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I bet you I have found at least 10 to 12 volunteer tomatoes. And, we love transplanting things because we hate to waste something. So if we find something that's living or doing its best to make it, we really want to help transplant it to either a safer spot in our garden, because these tomatoes currently out here are in kind of the open garden that's likely to be retilled and will soon be home to our squash and zucchini. I also have green beans that will need to go somewhere, but I think this will be squash and zucchini over here. And so these tomatoes are going to have to be dug out and relocated somewhere. A lot of them will probably try to just give away because we already have, 30 plus tomato plants. I am hoping that these are cherries though. They could be Romas, and they could be some other, sandwich variety that we have had in the past. But the cherries seem to be the most prolific when it comes to reseeding. And I think that's just because of the sheer volume of baby cherries that fall to the ground every year. They seem to make it really well through the winter, and over multiple tills, they still just have this will to live and they pop up. So I've now staked, like I said, 10 plus tomatoes. and I'll let them get a little bigger, and then I'll come back and transplant them. Some of them will go into pots, and a few of them I will transplant though up by our other tomatoes, with the hopes that there'll be cherries that can just kind of fold into our current stand of tomatoes. So, you know, if we find it and we can save it, we're gonna do our best. While we're on the topic of transplanting things, I like to have, what are these called? Sunflowers at the back of my garden. Because they get so tall, I want them on the back of the garden so that nothing gets shaded by them. But each year, like tomatoes, we have a bunch of volunteer sunflowers that come up, and that's just because, again, it's the life cycle, right? The adult plant flowers, and then once the season is over, the heads kind of droop down to the ground and they drop all those seeds. A lot of the seeds are eaten by birds. You know, birds love to come and feast on the sunflowers. But there are inevitably seeds that make it to the ground, that get covered by soil, and eventually will then sprout in the springtime. And so they're usually in this part of the garden down here, but they're not in like a perfectly straight line. So I come back and I've got one, I don't know if I can show you, I've got one right here that I'm gonna dig up and then probably transplant it back over here. There's a little hole there where I've got one or two, but they're still quite small. So again, it's just one more thing. It's like, why till over this and kill it? It's something we enjoy, and it's something that's really trying to make it here. So I'm gonna just give it a helpful hand. So now that I have my sunflower dug up, I have to decide where I want to put it. I'm going to put it here. I think I've got a sunflower that doesn't look great here. I have another one that doesn't look great beside it. And I even have a third one over here that may or may not make it. Oh, shrimp just came to help again. So I think I'm going to plant this one here. It seems a little more substantial than anything else. And hopefully it will soon start to look tall and beautiful like its neighbors. I'm not gonna lie, not all transplants make it, right? But a lot of these have been transplanted and they're doing quite well. This one here, I should have dug out a few days sooner. I'm not gonna disturb it though. It's close enough to the back of the garden. When we do our next bit of planting back here, we'll be careful not to disturb it. But you know, again, most of these were transplants. And they were volunteers from last year's plants. You know, a few of them, like these here, don't look great. This is the one I just transplanted today. So we'll see, you know, they need some water, they need some weeding, but hopefully we'll have some pretty sunflowers come July. I'm beginning to see some other little bugs. These little bugs here are on our potato plants, so I might need to dust them after this next round of rain, probably just with some diatomaceous earth. I saw something brown in the garden and I pulled my phone out and I was going to video thinking, oh, is it the groundhog? No. It's just a brown head of lettuce. It's a different variety sprinkled in with everything else. But when I saw it from afar, I thought, oh my gosh, is that the groundhog? Nope, just kidding. Something I do need to do before I step away from the garden though, is turn our little game cam back on. We picked this one up. It was pretty inexpensive. We actually have a second one that we might put in a different location just to get two different angles of the garden. But I'm going to turn it back on and hopefully we'll catch our little critter. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had a good time. As you can see, the clouds are still a little dark in the background. We've not yet had any rain though. So whatever that little cell was that I saw seemed to either sort of dissipate or go around us. So good thing though, that gave me more time to mow, more time in the garden. And now that I have finished up in the garden, I'm going to go do a little more mowing. Again, it's just mow, mow, mow today. But again, thanks for joining me. As the day has progressed, my hair has gotten a little wilder. You know, it's just one of those days. But, you know, if you have enjoyed watching me as I kind of hustle and bustle around the farm and do a little this and a little that, you know, every day is similar but different. There's always gardening to do, horses to care for, grass to mow. So again, hope you had a good time, and I hope you check back soon. Like, you know, we're always up to something. Bye, guys.